The scent hit me first. Wet fur, pine needles, and beneath it all, the metallic tang of fear so sharp it made my teeth ache. I'd stopped noticing my own starvation smell years ago, somewhere between my second winter in the Cascade Mountains and the night little Emma showed up with frost in her eyelashes and terror in her 7-year-old eyes. Tonight, crouched in the doorway of my timber cabin outside Timber Falls, Oregon, I knew that scent meant another one had found me. Another castaway. Another so-called defect that the Pax had decided wasn't worth keeping alive. I'm Sage Morrison. Once upon a time, I was a registered nurse at Pacific Northwest Regional Hospital, the premier medical facility serving the Werewolf Packs of Oregon and Washington. I had an apartment in Portland, a mate who promised me forever, and a future that looked like every other Omega's dream. Then I learned what forever really meant to Alpha Marcus Reed of the Crescent Bay Pack, and everything burned to ash. But tonight wasn't about my past. Tonight was about the scratching at my door. Weak, irregular, desperate. You're listening to Floxy's Shifter Romance Tales. Stories of forbidden bonds, dangerous mates, and women who discover they were never powerless. Before we begin, like, subscribe, and comment down below. Where are you listening from today? Your engagement means the world to me. Now, let's begin. I grabbed the iron fireplace poker I kept by the entrance. In the 3 years I'd been hiding in what the Pax called the Dead Zone, the 50-mile radius of no man's land between Pack territories, I'd learned that not everyone who came to my door was helpless. Some were scouts. Some were hunters. Some were worse. Who's there? I called through the heavy oak, my voice steady despite my racing heart. A whimper answered me.
Young.
Definitely young. I threw the bolt and yanked the door open. February wind screamed into my cabin, nearly extinguishing the kerosene lamp on the table. Collapsed on my doorstep was a girl, maybe 15, maybe 16, shaking so violently I could hear her bones rattling. She was stuck mid-shift, patches of russet fur sprouting from pale human skin, her fingers elongated into half-formed claws. Classic trauma response. When a shifter's mind breaks, sometimes the body can't decide what it is. Please, she gasped, her eyes rolling white. They're coming. They're going to. She clutched her stomach, and that's when I saw it. The small swell beneath her ribs. Pregnant. Maybe 3 months along. Inside. Now. I grabbed her arm, so thin I could feel every bone, and hauled her across the threshold. I kicked the door shut and threw the bolt, then the secondary deadbolt I'd installed after Dakota came to me last fall with knife wounds across his back. Emma, I shouted toward the loft. Bring blankets and the medical kit. Small footsteps thundered overhead, followed by Emma's face appearing over the loft railing. At 7, she was the oldest of the kids I'd taken in, and she'd appointed herself my assistant. Her wolf blue eyes went wide when she saw the girl on the floor. Is she dying? Emma asked with the blunt honesty of a child who'd seen too much death. Not if I can help it. Blankets, Em. Fast. I wrapped the girl in my own coat, threadbare, held together with duct tape and prayers, and eased her toward the wood stove. The heat was minimal. I'd been rationing firewood, trying to make my dwindling supply last until spring. What's your name? I asked, checking her pulse.
Fast.
Too fast. Her skin was ice cold. Her lips blue. Harper, she whispered. Harper Chin. Emma appeared with an armful of quilts, the ones we'd stitched together from old clothes and fabric scraps. I tucked them around Harper while Emma set the battered medical kit beside me. The kit was a joke, half-empty bottles of antiseptic, ancient bandages, and a handful of over-the-counter medications I'd managed to steal from my old hospital before they froze my credentials. Who did this to you? I asked, though I already knew the answer. It was always the same story, just different names. Harper's eyes, one green, one hazel, a heterochromia that was probably why she'd been marked as defective, filled with tears. Alpha Marcus. He said the baby was wrong. Said it would be born broken. He told me to take care of it. My blood turned to ice water. Marcus. Of course it was Marcus. The baby's his? I kept my voice level, professional, even though my hands were shaking. Harper nodded, fresh tears cutting tracks through the dirt on her face. He said I was special. That I understood him. His mate, Alpha Vanessa, she can't have children. But he said he'd take care of me. Then the doctors did the genetic scan, and… She sobbed. They said the baby has markers. Defect markers. And Marcus, he looked at me like I was garbage. Of course he did. Because that's what Marcus did. He used people up and threw them away. I knew that better than anyone. I was his garbage too. Emma crouched beside Harper, her small hand finding the older girl's. You're safe now. Sage doesn't let anyone hurt us here. She's the best. I wished I felt as confident as Emma sounded. The truth was, every day I expected Marcus to find us. Every night I listened for the sound of engines, of boots, of the tactical teams that would come to drag us back to face justice. Harper listened to me. I gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet my eyes. You're in the dead zone now. Marcus's authority doesn't reach here. But I need to know. Did anyone follow you? She shook her head. I don't think so. I waited until the new moon. Ran in human form so they couldn't track my wolf scent. I hitched a ride with the trucker to Timber Falls, then walked the rest of the way. Someone at a diner. They said if you were in trouble and had nowhere else to go, you came here. To find the Omega who saves the broken ones. The Omega who saves the broken ones. That's what they called me in whispers. I wasn't sure if it was a title of respect or pity. You did good, Harper. You're safe. Let me check the baby, okay? I pressed my hand to her abdomen, using the diagnostic touch I'd learned in nursing school. Werewolf pregnancies were tricky. The fetus developed faster than human babies, and the mother's shifting could complicate everything. But I felt it, the flutter of life, the steady thrum of a heartbeat that was too fast to be Harper's. Strong, I said, smiling despite everything. Your baby's a fighter. Harper broke down completely, sobbing into the quilts. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't know where else to go. Marcus said. He said the council would order a termination. That defective bloodlines have to be purged to keep the species strong. The council, the High Council of Alphas, the governing body that ruled over all North American werewolf packs. They were the ones who'd written the Genetic Purity Act 15 years ago, the law that gave alphas the authority to humanely euthanize pups deemed unfit. Humanely. As if there was anything humane about murdering children. I'd fought against it. When I was still Marcus's mate, still naive enough to think I could change things from the inside, I'd argued with him about the Purity Act. I'd documented cases of children labeled defective who went on to live full lives. I'd even started building evidence that the genetic markers the council relied on were flawed. That's when Marcus showed me what he really thought of me. When he rejected me in front of the entire pack, called me barren, defective, worthless. When he made sure I'd never be believed by anyone who mattered. Can you heat up some broth? I asked, pushing the memories down. Harper needs to eat. Emma nodded and scampered to the small kitchen area. We didn't have much. Canned goods I'd bartered for in Timber Falls, dried meat from the deer I'd managed to trap last month, and whatever vegetables I could forage in the warmer months. But we had enough. We always made it work. While Emma worked, I helped Harper out of her torn clothes and into one of my oversized sweaters. Her body was covered in bruises, some fresh, some yellowing. Someone had beaten her. Recently. Who hit you? I asked quietly. Marcus's beta. Garrett. When I refused to go to the clinic. He said it would be easier if I cooperated. Harper's voice cracked. I ran before they could make me. Garrett. I remembered him, a brute of a man with cold eyes and a reputation for following orders without question. If Marcus had sent Garrett after Harper, it meant he considered her a threat. Loose ends had to be tied up. You're not going back, I told her. Ever. I promise you that. But even as I said it, a chill ran down my spine. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, a voice whispered that promises were fragile things in a world run by alphas who saw omegas as property and children as commodities. And 300 miles away, in the steel and glass tower that served as the headquarters of the North American Werewolf Council, Alpha King Wyatt Blackthorn was about to receive a phone call that would change everything. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that I had 8 mouths to feed, winter wasn't over, and I'd just taken in my most dangerous rescue yet. A pregnant girl carrying the child of the Alpha who destroyed me. I fed Harper the warm broth Emma had prepared, watching color slowly return to the girl's face. Around us, the cabin creaked in the wind, a sound I'd grown used to, almost comforting in its familiarity. "How many are there?" Harper asked suddenly, looking around the small space. "How many kids have you saved?" "7, I said. "You'll meet them in the morning. They're sleeping in the loft and the back room." Emma piped up, clearly proud. "There's me and Dakota who's 12 and the twins Mira and Milo who are 10 and little Finn who's 5 and Josie who's 9 and Connor who's 8. Dakota can't shift at all, and Myra's blind in her human form but she can see perfect as a wolf, and Milo has seizures and Finn was born without a wolf, and Josie's got a limp from when her pack broke her leg for being too slow, and Connor stutters real bad but he's super smart, and I can hear things nobody else can hear, like heartbeats from really far away." Harper's eyes widened. "They all found you?" "Or I found them," I said. Word spreads. When a pack decides a child is too broken to keep, sometimes the parents or siblings will get them to the dead zone. Sometimes they run on their own. Sometimes I go looking. "That's dangerous," Harper whispered. I smiled without humor. "Everything worth doing is." The wind outside intensified, howling through the pines. I glanced at the window. The glass was dark, but something made my wolf stir uneasily. That sixth sense that came with being a shifter, the one that said danger was close. "Emma, bed," I said softly. "Take Harper with you. Set her up with the spare mattress." "But I'm not tired," Emma started. "Now, Em." She heard the command in my voice and didn't argue. Emma helped Harper to her feet, and the two of them climbed the ladder to the loft. I waited until I heard them settling in, then moved to the window. Nothing. Just darkness and swaying trees and the endless snow. But my wolf was never wrong. Something was out there. I grabbed the poker again and doused the lamp, plunging the cabin into darkness. My eyes adjusted quickly, another shifter gift, and I crept to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. At first, nothing. Then I heard it. The distant rumble of engines. Multiple vehicles, moving fast, coming up the mountain road that led to my cabin. My heart dropped into my stomach. They'd found us. I had approximately 90 seconds before they arrived. "Everyone up." I hissed toward the loft. "Emergency protocol. Now." The kids knew the drill. We'd practiced it a dozen times. Within seconds, I heard scrambling above, the sound of small bodies moving fast, grabbing their emergency bags, heading for the trapdoor that led to the root cellar beneath the cabin. Dakota appeared first, his lanky 12-year-old frame already halfway down the ladder. He couldn't shift, but he was smart and fast. "How many?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "At least 3 vehicles. Maybe more." I was throwing supplies into a bag, water bottles, the medical kit, whatever non-perishable food I could grab. "Get everyone down. I'll buy you time." "Sage, no." Emma started, but Dakota grabbed her hand. "Come on, Em. Sage knows what she's doing." He pulled her toward the hidden trapdoor in the back room, where the others were already disappearing into the darkness below. Harper stumbled down the ladder, still weak. "What's happening?" "Marcus found you. Or someone did." I pressed the emergency bag into Dakota's hands. "There's a tunnel that leads half a mile east. Comes out near the old logging road. If I'm not back in an hour, you run. You understand? You take everyone and you run." Dakota's jaw tightened. "We don't leave you." "You will if I tell you to." I gripped his shoulder. "You're the oldest. They need you. Promise me, Dakota." He looked like he wanted to argue, but the sound of engines was getting louder. Closer. 1 hour, he said finally. Then he dropped through the trapdoor, pulling it shut behind him. I kicked the rug over the door and grabbed the poker. My heart was hammering, but my hands were steady. I'd been preparing for this moment for 3 years. The moment when my past caught up with me. The engines cut off.
Doors slammed.
Heavy boots crunched through snow. I positioned myself in the center of the room, poker held like a weapon, and waited. The door didn't just open. It exploded. One moment it was solid oak. The next it was kindling, blown inward by a single devastating kick. The force of it sent splinters flying. I threw up my arm to protect my face, stumbling backward. Figures poured into my cabin like a tactical assault team, which I realized with sinking dread they were. Black combat gear, military-grade weapons, red laser sights that painted my chest like targets. On your knees. Hands where we can see them. I didn't move.
Couldn't.
My wolf was screaming at me to submit, to show belly, to survive. But I'd spent 3 years learning to ignore those instincts. This is private property, I said, my voice shaking but loud. You have no authority here. That's where you're wrong. The voice came from the doorway.
Deep.
Commanding. It vibrated through the air like thunder, and I felt it in my bones, the unmistakable weight of an alpha's presence. But this wasn't just any alpha. The soldiers parted, and he walked in. Alpha King Wyatt Blackthorn was even more imposing in person than on the news broadcasts. He stood well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered and lethal in a way that had nothing to do with the tactical vest he wore. His hair was dark, almost black, cut military short. His eyes were the color of amber, wolf eyes, even in human form, and when they locked onto mine, I felt the air leave my lungs. He was beautiful in the way a weapon is beautiful.
Perfectly designed.
Absolutely deadly. Sage Morrison, he said, and hearing my name in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. You're a difficult woman to find. I lifted my chin. That was the point. He took a step closer, and I saw his second-in-command move with him, a scarred beta with cold eyes and a hand on his weapon. The beta scanned the cabin, taking in every detail. The small shoes by the door. The children's drawings on the walls. The extra bowls stacked by the sink. You're harboring fugitives, Wyatt said. It wasn't a question. I'm giving shelter to children who were abandoned. There's a difference. Not according to the law. His eyes narrowed. Where is he? Where is who? My nephew.
Caleb Blackthorn.
Age 8. He disappeared 2 weeks ago from Seattle after his parents died in a car accident. His scent trail led here. Wyatt's voice dropped, gaining an edge that made my survival instinct scream. If you've hurt him, I would never hurt a child. The words came out fierce, automatic. Ever. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Then where is he? My mind raced.
Caleb.
8 years old. Disappeared from Seattle 2 weeks ago. I didn't have any new arrivals that fit that description, but then I remembered. Connor. Connor had arrived 3 months ago, terrified and alone, saying his parents were dead and bad people were trying to take him away. Connor, who had nightmares about doctors with needles. Connor, who flinched every time I mentioned Seattle. Connor, who stuttered so badly he could barely get words out, but who was brilliant with numbers and could solve complex math problems in his head. Connor, who was currently hiding in my root cellar with the others. I don't know anyone named Caleb, I said carefully. It was technically true. Wyatt studied me. Then he inhaled deeply, scenting the air. His eyes widened fractionally. He's here. I can smell him. And others. Children. He looked around the cabin again, this time with growing alarm. How many? That's none of your business. It's every bit my business. I'm the Alpha King. Every wolf in North America is under my protection. Protection? I laughed, and it came out bitter and sharp. Is that what you call the Genetic Purity Act? Protection? When you let alphas murder children for being different. The beta's hand moved toward his weapon. Watch your tone, Omega. But Wyatt held up a hand, stopping him. What are you talking about? The Purity Act. The law your council passed that says any pup deemed genetically defective can be euthanized. The law that's been used to kill hundreds of children over the past 15 years. My voice was rising, anger overriding fear. The children you're so desperate to protect? Your precious council ordered them dead. Wyatt's expression hardened. The Purity Act is designed to prevent suffering. to ensure that children aren't born with conditions that would make their lives unbearable. Unbearable? Or inconvenient. I took a step forward, forgetting the armed soldiers, forgetting everything except the fury that had been building in me for years. I was a nurse. I saw what your council calls defects. Pups who couldn't shift. Pups with physical disabilities. Pups who were too small, too slow, too different. And you know what happened to them? Their own parents brought them to the hospital and asked the doctors to make it quick, to make it painless, to make it humane. I saw something shift in Wyatt's face. A crack in the armor. I was engaged to Alpha Marcus Reed. I continued, my voice shaking now. He wanted me to administer a drug called V7 to the pups in Crescent Bay's nursery. It's a synthetic stimulant that forces early shifting in children whose wolves develop slowly. He said it would make them stronger, that it would elevate the pack status. V7 is banned, Wyatt said quietly. Banned but not enforced. Because too many alphas want the same thing Marcus wanted, stronger wolves, better bloodlines, perfect offspring. And when I refused to poison children, Marcus destroyed me. He declared me defective, barren, worthless. He rejected me in front of the entire pack and made sure I'd never be believed if I spoke out. The cabin was silent except for the wind howling outside. Wyatt stared at me, and I watched something dangerous kindle in his amber eyes. You're saying Marcus Reed is using V7 on children?
Was.
I don't know if he still is, but he did then. And when I refused to help him, he made sure I couldn't expose him. Because who would believe a rejected Omega over a powerful Alpha? I would. The words hung in the air between us. I blinked, not sure I'd heard him correctly. What? I said I would believe you. Wyatt took another step forward. We were only a few feet apart now, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his eyes. If what you're saying is true, Marcus Reed has committed treason. The use of banned substances on children is a capital offense. It is true, but I can't prove it. He burned all the records. The only evidence is the children who survived the treatment, and most of them are. I swallowed hard. Most of them didn't make it. A sound came from beneath the floorboards. A muffled cough. Wyatt's eyes snapped to the rug covering the trapdoor. They're hiding. Of course they're hiding. You broke down my door, with armed soldiers. What did you expect? He looked at me for a long moment, then turned to his beta. Stand down. Everyone outside. Wait by the vehicles. The beta frowned. Sir, we haven't secured. I said stand down, Malik. That's an order. Malik's jaw tightened, but he obeyed. The soldiers filed out, leaving me alone with the Alpha King. Wyatt walked to the center of the room and knelt down by the rug. Caleb, he called softly. It's Uncle Wyatt. You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you, or anyone else here. I promise. Silence. Please, Wyatt said, and the vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. Your mom was my sister, my twin. When she died, Caleb, you're all I have left of her. I've been looking for you everywhere. I thought. His voice cracked. I thought I'd lost you too. The trap door creaked open. Connor, Caleb, poked his head up, his eyes wide and terrified. You Uncle W. Wyatt? Yeah, buddy. It's me. Wyatt's entire demeanor changed. The lethal alpha became something softer, gentler. Come here. But Caleb didn't move toward his uncle. Instead, he scrambled out of the cellar and ran to me, wrapping his arms around my waist and burying his face in my stomach. Don't let him take me, Caleb whispered, his stutter worse than usual. Please, Sage. The D-doctors. They'll make me take the green medicine again. I froze. Then, slowly, I looked at Wyatt. The Alpha King had gone completely still. His face was blank, but I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. Green medicine, he repeated softly. Show him, I said quietly to Caleb. Show him your arms. Caleb shook his head, clinging tighter to me. It's okay, I murmured, stroking his hair.
He needs to see.
He needs to understand. Slowly, reluctantly, Caleb pulled up his sleeve. His inner arm was covered in needle marks. Some were old scars, faded to white. Others were fresh, angry red punctures that tracked up toward his elbow like a grotesque road map. Wyatt stared at the scars. I watched the color drain from his face. Who did this? His voice was barely audible. The D-doctors, Caleb whispered. After Mom and Dad died. They said my wolf was broken. That I was supposed to shift by now. They gave me shots to fix me. Where? Wyatt's hands were shaking. Where did this happen? The H hospital. In Seattle. The one where all the important wolves go. I saw the moment it hit him. The realization that the corruption he thought he was hunting in my cabin was actually festering in his own capital. In the hospital that served the council elite. Wyatt looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something I never expected to see from an alpha king. Horror.
And shame.
You ran, he said to Caleb. You ran from the hospital because they were hurting you. Caleb nodded. Sage's number was in Mom's phone. She told me if I was ever in trouble and she wasn't there, I should call Sage. So I did. Wyatt's eyes snapped to mine. You knew his mother. I knew a lot of mothers, I said quietly. The ones who brought their children to me when the Pax decided they weren't worth keeping. Your sister, Elena, was one of them. She came to me 5 years ago with Caleb. He wasn't shifting on schedule, and her pack was pressuring her to have him evaluated. She was terrified they'd declare him defective. Elena never told me, because you're the Alpha King. Because admitting her son might be defective would have been political suicide. Because she loved you, but she didn't trust the system you represent. I met his gaze steadily. I told her Caleb was fine. That some wolves are late bloomers. That forcing a shift too early can cause permanent psychological damage. She promised she'd protect him. And she did, until she died. Wyatt's voice was hollow. And I let the council doctors take custody of him. I thought. He looked at Caleb, at the scars, at the fear in his nephew's eyes. I thought they were helping him. They were torturing him, I said flatly. V7 doesn't just force early shifting. It burns through a child's nervous system like acid. The pain is excruciating. And if the child survives, most don't, they're left with permanent damage. Physical. Psychological. Sometimes both. The other children were emerging from the cellar now. Dakota first, positioning himself protectively in front of the younger ones. Then Emma, her wolf-blue eyes fixed on the Alpha King with fierce suspicion. The twins, Mira and Milo, holding hands. Little Finn, who at 5 had never shifted and probably never would. Josie, limping slightly. And finally, Harper, pregnant and pale. Wyatt looked at them. Really looked at them. I saw him taking in every detail. The scars. The fear. The defensive way they clustered together, ready to run or fight. You saved them, he said finally. I gave them a chance to survive. That's all. It's more than the council gave them. Wyatt stood up slowly, his movements careful, non-threatening. More than I gave them. He pulled out his phone, and my instinct screamed. What are you doing? Calling for transport.
He looked at me.
We're going back to Seattle. All of us.
No.
I stepped between him and the children. Absolutely not. You're not taking them anywhere. Sage.
No.
You show up here with guns and soldiers, you break down my door, and now you want me to just hand them over? These children ran from your system. From your council. From your laws. I won't let you drag them back to be experimented on or killed. I'm not going to hurt them. Wyatt's voice was calm, measured. I'm going to protect them. But I can't do that here. You're running out of supplies. It's the middle of winter. This cabin isn't safe. It's safer than your city.
Maybe.
But Marcus Reed knows you have Harper. He called me personally 3 hours ago, demanding I retrieve her. He said she's mentally unstable, that she kidnapped herself, and is making wild accusations. He wants her back. And he's not going to stop looking. My blood went cold. You spoke to Marcus? He doesn't know I've found you yet. But he will. He has trackers. Resources. If he comes for Harper, for any of you in this cabin, you won't stand a chance. And if we go to Seattle, we'll be in a cage. You'll be under my protection. In the royal compound. No one, not Marcus, not the council, can touch you there without going through me. I wanted to laugh, to scream, to tell him that promises from alphas meant nothing, that I'd learned that lesson the hard way. But then Emma tugged on my sleeve. Sage, she whispered, I'm cold, and hungry, and I'm tired of running. I looked down at her thin face and the dark circles under her eyes. At all of them. These children who trusted me to keep them safe, who'd survived on scraps and hope and the promise that tomorrow would be better. And I realized why it was right. I couldn't protect them here. Not from Marcus. Not from winter. Not from starvation. If we go, I said slowly, we go together. All of us. And at the first sign that you or your council plan to hurt these kids, I will burn your city to the ground. Do you understand me? Wyatt held my gaze. I understand. I'm not joking. I know. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I'd expect nothing less from the Omega who saves the broken ones. He made the call. Within minutes, I heard the thrum of helicopter rotors in the distance. We were leaving the dead zone. We were going into the heart of the system that had tried to destroy us. And I had no idea if I'd just saved these children or delivered them straight into the hands of their executioners. The helicopter ride to Seattle took 2 hours. 2 hours of deafening rotor noise, and the kids pressed against me like I was the only solid thing in a tilting world. Emma kept her face buried in my shoulder. Harper clutched my hand so hard I lost feeling in my fingers. Even Dakota, who tried so hard to be brave, kept glancing at me for reassurance. Only Caleb seemed calm. He sat next to Wyatt, and though he didn't speak, he let his uncle's arm rest across his shoulders. That small gesture of trust made something twist in my chest. Wyatt had given the boy his jacket, and Caleb was swimming in it, but he hadn't let go of the fabric since we'd boarded. I watched Wyatt across the helicopter cabin. He was on his phone, typing furiously, his jaw set in a hard line. Every few minutes, he'd look up at the kids, at me, and something unreadable would flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or determination. When Seattle's skyline appeared through the window, my stomach dropped. The city sprawled below us, all glass and steel and wealth. And rising above it all was Blackthorn Tower, a monolith of black glass that caught the dawn light and turned it sharp as a knife blade. That's where we're going? Dakota asked, his voice tight. The royal compound, Wyatt said. Top 20 floors. Completely secure. Secure, I repeated. Or imprisoned? His amber eyes met mine. That depends on how you look at it. The helicopter landed on a private helipad on the tower's roof. The moment the doors opened, we were hit by a wall of cold wind that smelled like rain and exhaust and too many wolves living too close together. City smell. Pack smell. Everything my instincts told me to run from. Malik, Wyatt's beta, was waiting with a team of staff, housekeepers, I guessed, based on their formal uniforms. They stared at us like we were feral animals dragged in from the wilderness, which I supposed we were. I was still wearing duct-taped boots and layers of mismatched men's clothing. The kids were bundled in donated coats and hand-me-downs. Harper looked like she might collapse at any moment. We were dirty, exhausted, and completely out of place in this world of marble and chrome. Guest wing, Wyatt ordered. Medical team standing by. I want full examinations, gentle ones. No needles unless absolutely necessary, and only with consent. Understood. The head housekeeper, a stern woman with silver hair, nodded. Of course, Your Majesty. And someone find them proper clothes. Kids first. Wyatt paused, looking at me. Make sure Ms. Morrison has everything she needs. I need to stay with the children, I said immediately. You will. The guest wing has a main suite connected to several rooms. You'll all be together. He turned to Malik. No one enters without my express permission. And I mean no one. Not council members, not doctors, not even me unless Ms. Morrison approves it. Malik's eyebrows rose. Sir, the council is demanding a briefing. The council can wait. Wyatt's voice dropped to that dangerous register that made even his beta straighten. These children have been through hell. They get rest, food, and medical care before they get interrogated by politicians. Clear? Crystal, Your Majesty. We were ushered into an elevator that moved so smoothly, I barely felt it descend. When the doors opened, I had to work to keep my jaw from dropping. The guest wing was obscene in its luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The floors were heated marble. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. There was a kitchen stocked with more food than I'd seen in 3 years, a living room bigger than my entire cabin, and a hallway that led to what the housekeeper informed us were 6 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. "It's a palace," Emma whispered, her eyes huge. "It's a cage," Dakota muttered, but even he couldn't hide his awe. The medical team arrived within minutes, 2 doctors and a nurse, all wearing sympathetic expressions and moving with careful, non-threatening slowness. They introduced themselves, showed us their equipment, and explained everything they wanted to do before they did it. It was so different from the clinical coldness I remembered from pack hospitals that I almost didn't trust it. "We're just going to do basic checks," Dr. Reeves, an older woman with kind eyes, explained. "Height, weight, temperature. Look at any injuries that need attention. If anyone wants blood work to check for deficiencies, we can do that, but only if you want to. No one will force you to do anything." Caleb spoke up, his stutter pronounced. "And no green M medicine?" Dr. Reeves's expression darkened. "Absolutely not. V7 is banned in this facility. Anyone caught using it would be arrested immediately. But the other D doctors are being investigated as we speak," Wyatt said from the doorway. I hadn't heard him enter. "I've ordered a full audit of Pacific Northwest Regional Hospital. Every doctor who treated you, Caleb, every nurse who administered medications, every administrator who signed off on treatment plans. If they used V7, they'll answer for it." The examinations took an hour. One by one, the kids were checked, given clean bills of health with notes for follow-up care, physical therapy for Josie's leg, vision support for Mira, seizure management for Milo. Harper was examined last, and Dr. Reeves confirmed what I'd suspected. She was healthy, the baby was strong, and she was about 14 weeks along. "Will they make me get rid of it?" Harper asked, her voice small. "No," Wyatt said firmly. He'd stayed for the entire process, standing against the wall like a silent guardian. "Your body, your choice. No one will force you to do anything." Harper's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." After the doctors left, the kids scattered to explore their new temporary home. Emma claimed a bedroom with a window seat. Dakota found the library and disappeared into the books. The twins discovered a game system and were soon absorbed in some racing game. Finn, exhausted, fell asleep on the couch within minutes. I found myself alone in the kitchen with Wyatt. He was making coffee, actual fresh coffee that smelled like heaven, and I realized I hadn't had real coffee in 3 years. "Want some?" he asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He poured 2 mugs and slid one across the counter to me. "You don't have to stay in the kitchen," he said. "There's a balcony through those doors. Private. Good view." I followed him outside. The balcony was massive, with heating elements built into the floor and furniture that probably cost more than everything I'd owned in my entire life. But the view stole my breath. Seattle spread out below us like a glittering circuit board, and in the distance, I could see the mountains, the Cascades, where my cabin sat empty and cold. "You're wondering if you made the right choice," Wyatt said. It wasn't a question. "I'm wondering when the other shoe drops." I sipped the coffee. It was perfect.
Of course it was.
"When does Marcus come?" demanding Harper. "When does the council decide these kids are too much trouble?" Marcus called again during the flight. I didn't answer. Wyatt leaned against the railing. "He knows I found Harper. He's demanding I return her to Crescent Bay. And I'm not giving her to him. Or any of them." He turned to face me fully. "What you said in the cabin about the V7, about the Purity Act being used to eliminate children instead of protect them, it's been eating at me. I've been Alpha King for 8 years, Sage. 8 years, and I never questioned the system I inherited. I trusted the council. I trusted the pack alphas. I thought I was doing right by our species. And now I'm wondering how many children died while I was busy trusting the wrong people. His voice was rough. Caleb's arms, those scars, they're going to haunt me for the rest of my life. Good, I said flatly. They should. He looked startled, then let out a short, humorless laugh. You don't pull punches, do you? I can't afford to. Not when children's lives are at stake. I set down my mug. So what now? You keep us here like exotic pets? Parade us in front of the council to prove how merciful you are. I'm going to war, Wyatt said simply. With Marcus. With any alpha using V7. With the council members who've been turning a blind eye to illegal culling. I'm going to tear apart the Purity Act and rebuild it from scratch. I stared at him. You can't. The council will never allow it. They will if I have proof. Evidence. Testimony. His eyes locked on mine. I need your help. My help. You worked in the system. You documented cases. You know which doctors, which administrators were involved. You can testify against Marcus. He stepped closer. I can protect you, Sage. I can make sure Marcus never touches you again. But I need you to stand up in front of the council and tell them what you told me. Fear shot through me, cold and sharp. If I do that, Marcus will destroy me. Again. He'll drag my name through every pack in North America. He'll make sure no one ever believes another word I say. Not if you have the Alpha King standing beside you.
We were close now.
Close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his amber eyes, could smell his scent, pine and smoke and something uniquely him that made my wolf stir in ways I didn't want to examine. Why? I whispered. Why do you care? You could sweep this under the rug. Protect your council. Maintain the status quo. Because I looked into my nephew's eyes and saw terror.
Terror of me.
Of the system I represent. And I realized that if I don't fix this, if I don't make it right, then I'm as guilty as the ones who hurt him. His hand came up, hovering near my face but not quite touching. And because you're the bravest person I've ever met. You saved 8 children with nothing but will and stubbornness. Imagine what you could do with an army behind you. Before I could respond, the balcony door slammed open. Malik stood there, his expression grim. Sir, we have a problem. Alpha Marcus Reed is here. He's in the lobby with a legal team, and he's demanding to see you. He says he has a warrant for Harper Chen's arrest. My blood turned to ice. Wyatt's expression hardened into something dangerous. Tell Alpha Reed that he can make an appointment like everyone else. And if he doesn't leave voluntarily, I'll have security escort him out. He's not alone, sir. He has council support. Chairman Donovan is with him. Wyatt's jaw clenched. Chairman Donovan was the head of the council, a powerful alpha with connections to every major pack in North America. If he was backing Marcus, this was bigger than I'd thought. Stay here, Wyatt told me. Keep the kids inside. Don't open the door for anyone. Wyatt. I won't let him take her. Any of you. I promise. And then he was gone, Malik following in his wake. I stood on the balcony, staring at the city lights and trying to calm my racing heart. Somewhere 20 floors below, Marcus was demanding the return of his pregnant victim. And the council was backing him. I'd walked into a trap. A gilded, luxurious trap. And I had no idea if Wyatt Blackthorne was my savior or just another alpha who'd eventually throw me to the wolves. I couldn't stay in the guest wing. Not while Marcus was 20 floors below, demanding Harper like she was property he'd misplaced. Dakota, I said, finding him in the library. I need you to watch everyone. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Wyatt. Understand? His eyes narrowed. You're going down there. I have to. Sage, that's insane. If he sees you, he's going to see me eventually. Better on my terms than his. I gripped his shoulder. Keep them safe. I'll be back. Before he could argue further, I slipped out into the hallway. The elevator required a keycard, but I found the emergency stairs. 20 flights down, my legs burning, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could hear Marcus before I saw him. His voice echoed through the marble lobby, smooth, authoritative, laced with barely contained fury. "This is a matter of pack law, Your Majesty. Harper Chun is a member of Crescent Bay. She's mentally unstable, a danger to herself and the unborn child she's carrying. I have every right to take her into protective custody." I peered around the corner. The lobby was massive, all black marble and chrome. Marcus stood in the center, flanked by 3 men in expensive suits, his legal team. Beside him was Chairman Donovan, a silver-haired alpha with cold eyes and a reputation for crushing anyone who challenged council authority. Wyatt stood across from them, Malik at his side. The Alpha King looked calm, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were clenched at his sides. "Protective custody," Wyatt repeated, his voice flat. "Is that what you call forcing a pregnant teenager to terminate her pregnancy?" Marcus's expression didn't flicker. "I have no idea what you're referring to." Harper approached me with concerns about the pregnancy. Medical scans revealed genetic abnormalities. I suggested she speak with a counselor about her options. She became hysterical and fled. The lie was so smooth, so perfectly delivered. This was the Marcus I remembered, the one who could look you in the eye and rewrite reality to suit his needs. "That's not true," I said, stepping into the lobby. Every head turned. The air pressure in the room changed, thickening with tension. Marcus's eyes locked onto me, and I watched the shock ripple across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by something uglier. Contempt. "Sage," he said, my name dripping with false concern. "My God. We've been looking everywhere for you. When you disappeared 3 years ago, we feared the worst." "You didn't fear anything," I said, walking toward them. "You exiled me, froze my assets, made sure I'd never work again. You wanted me gone, Marcus. You got your wish." "Sage." Wyatt started, but I held up a hand. "I'm fine." I wasn't. My whole body was shaking, my wolf screaming at me to submit, to run, to do anything except stand here and face the alpha who destroyed me. But I'd spent 3 years learning to ignore those instincts. Harper told me what happened. You got her pregnant, discovered the baby had genetic markers you didn't like, and ordered her to terminate. When she refused, you sent your beta to beat her into submission. Marcus laughed. It was a warm, charming sound that made my skin crawl. "Still delusional, I see. Harper is a confused child who developed an unhealthy attachment to me. I never touched her inappropriately. As for the pregnancy," he turned to Wyatt, "a simple DNA test will prove the child isn't mine." "Then you won't mind submitting to one," Wyatt said coldly. "Of course not. I have nothing to hide." Marcus's smile was perfect. Unlike Ms. Morrison, who apparently has been harboring fugitives in the dead zone. "Tell me, Your Majesty, how many stolen children did you find in her possession?" "They weren't stolen," I snapped. "They were thrown away, declared defective by alphas like you, and left to die." "Defective?" Chairman Donovan spoke for the first time, his voice like gravel. "A harsh word, Ms. Morrison. The Genetic Purity Act uses the term non-viable, and it exists to prevent suffering. Surely you, as a nurse, understand the mercy in preventing a life of pain. I understand that you've used that law to murder hundreds of children whose only crime was being different." I turned to face Donovan fully. "And I understand that alphas have been using banned substances like V7 to force conformity, causing the very defects you claim to be preventing." Donovan's expression hardened. "Careful, Omega. Those are serious accusations. Do you have proof?" "I have 8 children upstairs who bear the scars of your mercy, including the Alpha King's nephew, who has needle marks up and down his arms from V7 injections administered at Pacific Northwest Regional Hospital." The lobby went silent. Donovan's eyes flickered to Wyatt. "Your Majesty, is this true?" "I've seen the scars myself," Wyatt said, his voice deadly quiet. "My nephew was tortured by doctors operating under council oversight. If Ms. Morrison's accusations are true, and I believe they are, then we have a systemic problem that goes far beyond one rogue alpha." Marcus's composure cracked, just for a second. "This is absurd. Sage Morrison is a bitter, rejected Omega who's been living in the wilderness for 3 years. She's clearly mentally unstable. I'm stable enough to remember the night you asked me to poison children. I cut him off. September 12th, 3 years ago. You came to my apartment with a vial of V7 and a list of names. 23 pups in the Crescent Bay nursery. You wanted me to administer the drug in their routine vaccinations. You said it would make them stronger, that it would elevate the pack status. Marcus's jaw clenched. You have no proof. No documentation. Just the ravings of a woman scorned. I have my testimony. And I have Harper's. And Caleb's. And every other child you people tried to erase. I stepped closer to Marcus, close enough to see the rage simmering in his eyes. You rejected me because you thought I'd be silent. Invisible. Too broken to fight back. You were wrong. Marcus's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. The contact sent a shock of revulsion through me. You forget your place, Omega, he snarled, his alpha aura flooding the room. You forget what happens to those who defy their betters. The pressure was immense, crushing. My knees buckled. My wolf whimpered, desperate to submit, to show throat, to survive. Then Wyatt was there.
He didn't speak. Didn't shout.
He simply released his own aura, and it was like a tidal wave crashing over Marcus's pathetic attempt at dominance. The Alpha King's power filled the lobby, ancient and absolute. Marcus's grip on my wrist loosened. He actually stumbled backward, his face going pale. Touch her again, Wyatt said, his voice vibrating with barely controlled fury, and I will rip your throat out in front of your legal team. Are we clear, Alpha Reed? Marcus bared his throat in automatic submission. He couldn't help it. When faced with a power that much greater than his own, his wolf took over. This is highly irregular, Donovan said, but even his voice had lost its edge. Your Majesty, you're allowing personal feelings to cloud your judgment. The Omega is clearly manipulating. The Omega has a name. Wyatt cut him off. And she's under my protection, as are all the children in this building. If you want to challenge that, Chairman Donovan, I suggest you call for a full council vote. But be warned, if we open this investigation, I will make sure every alpha using V7, every doctor administering it, every administrator covering it up is exposed and prosecuted to the full extent of council law. Donovan's eyes narrowed. You're threatening the council. I'm promising transparency. If the council has nothing to hide, then an investigation shouldn't be a problem. Wyatt's smile was sharp as a blade. Unless you'd prefer I handle this quietly. Behind closed doors. The way things have always been done. The threat hung in the air. Donovan was powerful, but Wyatt was the Alpha King. In a direct confrontation, there was only one outcome. We'll discuss this at the next council session, Donovan said finally. But mark my words, Your Majesty, if you're wrong about this, if these accusations prove baseless, there will be consequences. And if I'm right? Wyatt asked softly. Donovan didn't answer. He turned and walked toward the exit, his entourage following. Marcus lingered for a moment, his eyes burning into me with pure hatred. This isn't over, he said quietly, meant only for my ears. You should have stayed hidden, Sage. You should have stayed broken. I was never broken, I whispered back. That was your first mistake. Marcus left. The lobby emptied. And suddenly it was just me and Wyatt and the weight of what we'd just started. That was reckless, Wyatt said, but there was no anger in his voice. You should have stayed upstairs. I couldn't let him lie about Harper. About any of it. My hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. He was going to take her. I wouldn't have let that happen. You don't know that. Marcus is persuasive. He has the council's ear. He could have. Sage. Wyatt stepped closer, his hand cupping my face. The contact was gentle, grounding. I gave you my word. No one takes those children. No one takes you. I meant it. I looked up at him, at the fierce protectiveness in his amber eyes, and felt something shift in my chest. Something dangerous and terrifying and impossible to ignore. Why? I whispered. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. Because when I look at you, I don't see a rejected Omega. I see someone who fought a war alone and won. I see someone who saved my nephew's life. I see. He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. I see my mate. The words hung between us, impossible and true. I felt it then. The pull I'd been trying to ignore since the moment he'd walked into my cabin. The bond that was supposed to be sacred, faded, unbreakable. The mate bond. That's not possible, I breathed. I was rejected. Marcus severed the bond. I can't. Marcus rejected you because he was a fool who didn't deserve you. But he wasn't your true mate, Sage. He couldn't have been. Because I feel it. Right here. He pressed my hand to his chest, over his heart. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. I wanted to argue. To tell him he was wrong, that this was just proximity and adrenaline and trauma bonding. But I could feel it too. The thrumming warmth where our skin touched, the way my wolf had stopped cowering and started purring, the inexplicable certainty that this man, this alpha king I barely knew, was mine. This is insane, I whispered. Yes, Wyatt agreed, his lips curving into a small smile. Completely. We barely know each other. We have time. Marcus will come after us. The council will try to destroy you for protecting me. Let them try. His hand moved to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. I'm the Alpha King, Sage. I didn't get this position by backing down from fights. And you're the woman who looked me in the eye and called me out for failing these children. You're not afraid of anything. I'm terrified, I admitted. All the time. Then be terrified with me. He leaned down, his forehead resting against mine. We'll face this together. And standing there in the marble lobby of Blackthorn Tower, with the mate bond humming between us and the promise of war hanging over our heads, I made a choice. I kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, like we were both afraid the other might disappear. Then Wyatt's arms wrapped around me, solid and real, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home after a lifetime of being lost. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Wyatt smiled. So that's a yes? To what? To fighting this war together. To being my mate. To burning down the system and building something better from the ashes. I thought of the children upstairs. Of Harper and her unborn baby. Of Caleb and his scars. Of every lost pup who'd run to me because they had nowhere else to go. Yes, I said. To all of it. And somewhere in Crescent Bay, Alpha Marcus Reed was making plans of his own. Plans that involved destroying the woman who dared to defy him and the king who dared to protect her. The war had begun. The emergency council session was called for 3 days later. 3 days that felt like holding my breath underwater, waiting for the inevitable crash. Wyatt spent those days building his case. He had investigators comb through Pacific Northwest Regional Hospital's records, looking for evidence of V7 use. He brought in independent doctors to examine all 8 children, documenting their scars, their trauma, their stories. He collected testimony from nurses who'd been too afraid to speak out, from parents who'd lost children to the Purity Act, from wolves across the country who'd been labeled defective and survived anyway. I spent those days with the kids, trying to give them some semblance of normalcy in a world that was anything but normal. Emma discovered a love for painting and covered the guest wing walls with colorful murals. Dakota devoured every book in the library. The twins found a gaming system and spent hours building virtual worlds where they could be heroes. Harper, under the care of Wyatt's personal physician, started to gain weight and color in her cheeks. And Caleb, my Connor, slowly started to trust his uncle. I'd watch them together, Wyatt teaching the boy chess or reading to him before bed, and something in my chest would ache with a feeling I didn't dare name.
Hope.
It felt like hope. But hope was a dangerous thing when you were about to walk into a room full of alphas who wanted you silenced. The night before the council session, Wyatt found me on the balcony. I'd been standing there for an hour, staring at the city lights and trying to calm the panic clawing at my throat. Can't sleep? He asked, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. I keep thinking about tomorrow. about facing Marcus again, about what happens if the council doesn't believe us. They'll believe us. The evidence is overwhelming. Evidence can be dismissed. Witnesses can be discredited. Marcus is good at making people see what he wants them to see. I turn to face him. What if this backfires? What if they side with him and come after the kids? Wyatt pulled me into his arms, and I let myself sink into the warmth of him. Over the past 3 days, I discovered that he was steady in ways I'd forgotten anyone could be. When I spiraled, he grounded me. When I doubted, he believed enough for both of us. If they side with Marcus, Wyatt said quietly, then I'll abdicate. I'll give up the crown, and we'll take the kids somewhere safe.
Canada.
Europe. Somewhere they can't reach us. I pulled back to look at him. You can't mean that. You're the Alpha King. Your whole life means nothing if I can't protect my family. His hands cupped my face. You and those children. You're my pack now. My priority. I won't let anyone hurt you. Not the council. Not Marcus. Not anyone. You'd give up everything for us? In a heartbeat. He kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. You saved Caleb when I couldn't. You've been fighting this war alone for 3 years. Let me fight it with you now. Let me be your alpha. The mate bond hummed between us, stronger every day. I'd fought it at first, terrified of trusting another alpha, terrified of the vulnerability that came with accepting a mate. But Wyatt was a Marcus. He didn't demand submission, he offered partnership. He didn't see my strength as a threat, he celebrated it. I love you, I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. Wyatt went very still. Then a slow smile spread across his face, transforming him from the lethal Alpha King into something softer, younger, almost boyish. Say it again, he murmured. I love you. I don't know how it happened so fast, or why the moon goddess thought a broken Omega and an Alpha King could possibly work, but I love you. And it terrifies me. Good, he said, kissing me deeply. Because I love you too. And tomorrow, we're going to show the council exactly what happens when they underestimate a broken Omega. The council chamber was everything I'd imagined and worse. A circular room with soaring ceilings, dominated by a massive table where the 12 regional alphas sat like judges at a trial. Chairman Donovan presided at the head, his silver hair gleaming under the lights. Marcus sat 3 seats to his right, looking calm and confident. The gallery was packed. News crews lined the walls. Wyatt had insisted this session be broadcast live. Transparency, he'd said. If we're going to change the system, everyone needs to see what it's built on. I sat in the witness section, Malik stationed behind me like a silent guardian. Harper was beside me, her hand gripping mine so hard I was losing circulation. The other children were watching from a private viewing room upstairs, away from the cameras, but able to see everything. Wyatt stood at the center of the chamber, alone, facing the council. He looked every inch the Alpha King in his formal suit, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the barely contained fury in his eyes. This emergency session has been called, Donovan began, his voice echoing through the chamber, to address serious allegations brought by Alpha King Wyatt Blackthorne against Alpha Marcus Reed of Crescent Bay, and by extension, against the administration of the Genetic Purity Act itself. Your Majesty, you may present your case. Wyatt nodded. Thank you, Chairman. Over the past 3 days, I've conducted an investigation into the use of V7, a banned synthetic compound, on werewolf children. What I've discovered is a systemic pattern of abuse that reaches into every major pack in North America. He pulled up a screen behind him, displaying photographs. Children with needle marks. Medical records showing unauthorized treatments. Financial transactions between pharmaceutical companies and pack hospitals. V7 was banned 15 years ago because it causes severe neurological damage and has a mortality rate of 40% in children under 10. Yet hospital records show it's been administered to over 300 children in the past decade alone. Children who were deemed non-viable under the Purity Act. Children whose parents were told that force shifting was their only hope for normalcy. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Furthermore, Wyatt continued, his voice hardening. I have testimony from nurses, doctors, and victims that Alpha Marcus Reed not only used V7 on children in his pack, but actively pressured medical staff to administer it and to falsify records to cover up adverse reactions and deaths. Marcus stood up smoothly. Your Majesty, with all due respect, these are inflammatory accusations based on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of biased witnesses. Ms. Morrison, who is making these claims, is my rejected mate. She has every reason to want to destroy my reputation. Ms. Morrison's testimony is corroborated by multiple independent sources. Wyatt shot back, including medical records that you, Alpha Reed, signed off on personally. He pulled up another document, a treatment authorization form with Marcus's signature clearly visible at the bottom. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he recovered quickly. Those forms are routine. I sign dozens of medical authorizations every month. If V7 was administered, it was without my knowledge or consent. Then explain this, Wyatt said, and played an audio recording. Marcus's voice filled the chamber, distorted but recognizable. The weak ones need to be culled. If V7 kills them, they weren't strong enough to survive anyway. We're doing the species a favor. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Council members argued amongst themselves. Marcus went pale, his composure finally cracking. That recording is inadmissible, he shouted. It was obtained illegally. It was obtained by a nurse who feared for her patients' lives, Wyatt said coldly. A nurse you later fired and blacklisted when she threatened to report you. Order. Donovan slammed his gavel. Order in this chamber? When the noise died down, Wyatt spoke again. I'm not finished. I also have evidence that Alpha Reed coerced Harper Chin, a 16-year-old member of his pack, into a sexual relationship. When she became pregnant, and genetic testing revealed the fetus carried markers he deemed undesirable, he ordered her to terminate the pregnancy. When she refused, his beta beat her, and she was forced to flee for her life. Harper stood up beside me, trembling but determined. It's true, she said, her voice carrying through the chamber. Alpha Marcus is the father. I can prove it with a DNA test. And he told me my baby was a mistake that needed to be fixed. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but Donovan held up a hand. Enough. Alpha Reed, you will submit to DNA testing. If the results prove paternity, you will face additional charges of statutory assault and attempted coercion. This is a witch hunt, Marcus snarled. You're all being manipulated by a rejected Omega and a king who's thinking with something other than his brain. Wyatt moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment, he was standing at the podium. The next, he had Marcus pinned against the wall by his throat. Finish that sentence, Wyatt growled, his eyes flashing gold, and I'll finish you. Your Majesty. Donovan was on his feet. Stand down. But Wyatt didn't release Marcus. Instead, he spoke loud enough for every camera, every witness, every wolf watching to hear. Sage Morrison is my mate. My true mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself. If anyone in this chamber or beyond it thinks they can disrespect her, threaten her, or harm her, they'll answer to me. And I promise you, I am not a forgiving alpha. He released Marcus, who collapsed to the floor, gasping. The chamber was dead silent. Donovan stared at Wyatt, then at me, then back at Wyatt. You're claiming an Omega as your mate. An unmated, rejected Omega. I'm not claiming anything. I'm stating a fact. Wyatt walked back to the podium, straightening his suit. And as Alpha King, I'm exercising my right to propose new legislation. I'm calling for the complete repeal of the Genetic Purity Act and the establishment of a new Children's Protection Act that prioritizes care over culling, support over elimination, and healing over eugenics. Another eruption of noise. This time, not all of it was hostile. I saw some council members nodding. Others looked shocked but thoughtful. This is unprecedented, Donovan said, but his voice had lost its edge. Such a significant change would require a full council vote. Then call a vote, Wyatt said.
Right now.
Let every alpha in this room go on record. Are we a species that protects our young, Or are we a species that murders them for convenience? The vote was called. One by one, the alphas declared their positions. Some voted with Marcus, clinging to the old ways. But more, far more than I'd dared hope, voted with Wyatt. When the final count came in, it was 9-3 in favor of repeal. The Genetic Purity Act was dead. I sat there, stunned, as the chamber erupted in chaos. Reporters rushed forward. Council members argued and celebrated and shouted. Harper was crying beside me, her hand still gripping mine. And Wyatt was looking directly at me, a smile on his face that was pure triumph and relief. We'd won. Marcus was arrested that afternoon. DNA results came back 48 hours later, confirming he was the father of Harper's baby. He was charged with statutory assault, coercion, illegal use of banned substances, falsification of medical records, and conspiracy to commit murder. He'd spend the rest of his life in a council prison. The investigation spread. 3 other alphas were charged. 5 doctors lost their licenses. The pharmaceutical company producing V7 was shut down. And across North America, children who'd been labeled defective were suddenly being reevaluated, their families given resources and support instead of death sentences. It wasn't a perfect victory. Change never is. But it was a start. 2 months later, I stood in the Royal Gardens watching the kids play. Emma was racing Caleb across the lawn, both of them laughing. Dakota was teaching the twins how to identify medicinal herbs. Harper, now visibly pregnant, was sitting on a bench reading, one hand resting protectively on her belly. Finn was napping in the sun, finally peaceful. "They look happy," Wyatt said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "They are. For the first time in their lives, they're safe. Really safe. So are you." He kissed my temple. "How does it feel?" I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd become my everything. My mate. My partner. My alpha. Terrifying, I admitted. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For someone to take it all away. "No one's taking anything. You fought for this. You earned it." He cupped my face. "And in case I haven't mentioned it today, I love you, Sage Morrison. Soon to be Sage Blackthorn if you'll have me." My breath caught. Is that a proposal? It's a promise. That I'll spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you and those kids have everything you need. That I'll fight beside you, not in front of you. That I'll never make you feel small or broken or less than the incredible woman you are. He pulled a ring from his pocket, simple silver with a moonstone that caught the light.
So yes.
It's a proposal. Marry me, Sage. Be my queen. Help me build a world where no child is ever thrown away again. Tears blurred my vision. 3 years ago, I'd been rejected, exiled, left to die in the wilderness. I'd been told I was worthless, defective, broken beyond repair. But I wasn't broken. I'd never been broken. I'd been forged. "Yes," I whispered, then louder, "Yes." He slid the ring onto my finger and kissed me, deep and sweet and full of promise. Around us, the children started cheering. Apparently, they'd been watching the whole time. Emma ran over and crashed into us, hugging us both. "Does this mean you're going to be queen? Does this mean we get to stay forever?" "Forever," I promised, pulling her close. "We're family now. All of us. And families don't abandon each other." 6 months later, Harper gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Justice, and when I held him for the first time, I saw it, the violet eyes that marked him as a truth seer. The very trait Marcus had tried to eliminate would one day make Justice one of the most valuable wolves in our species. The moon goddess had a sense of irony, it seemed. I married Wyatt in a ceremony attended by thousands. I wore white and flowers in my hair, and when I walked down the aisle with Dakota on one side and Emma on the other, I wasn't a rejected Omega anymore. I was a queen, a mother, a warrior who'd fought a system and won. Most importantly, I was exactly who I'd always been. Just finally seen. They'd called me the Omega who saves the broken ones.
But the truth was simpler than that.
I wasn't saving broken things. I was showing the world that what they called broken was actually extraordinary. That the wolves they'd thrown away were treasures they'd been too blind to see. And when Wyatt took my hand and declared me his queen in front of every pack in North America, when the children who'd once hidden in my cabin stood beside me wearing crowns of flowers, I knew this was just the beginning. We'd torn down one law. Now we'd build 1,000 more that protected instead of destroyed, that celebrated instead of culled, that saw strength in differences instead of defects to be eliminated. And every lost pup who'd ever run to the rejected Omega, they'd have a home now. A real home. Because the Alpha King had tracked me down and learned my secret. The secret was simple. Love isn't about perfection. It's about seeing someone exactly as they are, scars, fears, broken pieces, and all, and choosing them anyway. Choosing them every single day. Forever.